Ever since the fairy type was introduced in Pokemon X and Y, Clefable has been a dominant force in competitive singles, whether it be ORAS OU, where it is one of the top 2 Pokemon in the viability rankings, whether it's ORAS Draft, where it's consistently drafted on all of the teams in the top team tours. It has dominated Pokemon. But in current generation, while it is still B+ in the current viability rankings for Scarlet and Violet, it has completely become non-existent in Draft League. And today, we're going to kind of explore why a Pokemon that has dominated the competitive scene for so long has completely fallen off in Draft League. One of the biggest issues in Draft League for Clefable is the introduction of Tera, which while it does exist in competitive OU, is a little bit more different in Draft League. When you have the ability to prepare for teams specifically and for specific threats in the metagame, Tera is really able to take advantage of a lot of these typical defensive walls that you see in matchups. To illustrate this point, let's take a look at the Scarlet and Violet 4 drafts from the past DCL season. Some of the Tera captains we see here that Clefable would typically wall would be something like probably Tornadus, Walking Wake, Enamorus, Raging Bolt, and maybe even the Sinistcha as well. The problem here now with Tera is these Pokemon that would be commonly checked by Clefable can be completely nullified by Tera. Tera Poison and Tera Steel are 2 specific Teras that just easily prevent Clefable from being able to do anything either defensively or offensively against these Pokemon, while also opening up some great utility in the rest of these matchups. Tera Poison allows you to prevent Toxic Spikes from being an issue, and Steel is just such a great defensive typing in general. The next big hindrance to the viability of Clefable in Draft League is the lack of viability for the common setup sets that we would see in previous generations. There's a lot of different reasons why these setup sets don't really work anymore and why they've been kind of nullified in the current generation. Like we talked about previously, Tera is a really big one. If we have to remove the Tera captain like Tornadus T from the game to get our setup Clefable going, it's really not going to be able to be viable most weeks, especially where most teams have bulky Tera captains that can stick around for a long period of time. Removing Tera Torn is not an easy feat by any means, and if the reward is set up Clefable, is that really the reward we're looking for in Draft League? One of the other things that really makes these type of sets struggle is the presence of Encore in the current metagame. Encore has become much more prevalent as a way to deal with these fast-paced offensive games to prevent setup sets from Pokemon like Tera King Gambit, Tera Zarude, amongst others from getting out of hand. You see this on a lot of offensive Pokemon like Iron Valiant even. Oftentimes one of your main setup sweepers or offensive breakers will oftentimes be packing Encore to deal with these type of sets, and with the 60 base speed, you really aren't going to be able to outpace anything to prevent yourself from being Encored. And then the final reason these setup sets aren't really viable anymore kind of leads into the final point, is that Moonlight now, as well as all these other recovery moves, are now 8 PP instead of the previous 16. The reason this stops the viability of these setup sets is you would usually leverage your HP to get many Calm Minds and Cosmic Powers up using multiple Moonlights along the way to keep yourself at high HP. With only 8, you're at much higher risk of critical hits, much higher risk of just not having the turns to be able to turn around once you get this setup to deal enough damage. And really in general, the fact that you only have 8 Moonlights, Clefable's bulk just doesn't cut it anymore. If we look at its stats, 95 HP, 73 defense, and 90 special defense is really just not strong enough in a metagame with so many powerful threats. And with weakened recovery, it's really hard to keep Clefable's HP high enough to impact the game frequently. Oftentimes Clefable could come in, take a hit, either throw a knockoff back, throw a Thunder Wave back, but now it's got to recover basically every time it comes in because the Pokemon attacking it are just that much more powerful, and with only 8 of those, the viability of that is just not there long term. You also lost a lot of moves in this generation. Teleport, now while you do have Baton Pass, did guarantee you to go out second, which allowed you to guarantee absorb a hit and get into your next Pokemon, which you kind of get already with base 60 speed with Baton Pass. But the 2 main ones are Toxic and Heal Bell. Most Pokemon have lost these moves, but this is big for Clefable. Toxic was a great way to pressure opposing defensive walls, leveraging your Moonlight and Wish to really whittle them down, and with your Magic Guard ability being unaffected by those moves yourself, really allowed you to get a leg up on those other defensive Pokemon. And Toxic is also just a great way to prevent setup sweepers in general, where you also have the Unaware. So This is a big loss for Clefable because it was really able to take advantage of its ability to beat other walls, or Toxic plus Unaware to take advantage of setup sweepers. Hillbell also gave you extra defensive utility to heal off random paralyzes on your team, allow you to get more aggressive into some of your walls with your offensive threats, knowing that Clefable can come in, take a hit, and heal off those potential statuses. So if you're a guy like me who loves Clefable and used it a lot in previous generations, what Pokemon do you use now? Well, the main one is going to be Screamtail. I love Screamtail. I've drafted this Pokemon so many times, and the main reason you want to draft this Pokemon, one, it's got great bulk, 115, 99, 115, but the main thing is that 111 speed is huge. Getting the ability to have speed on a bulky Pokemon like this allows you to use your bulk to get up Encores, you set up yourself, and also just get up hazards, something that Clefable also does. It kind of does all of the things you want from a Clefable while having that little bit extra bulk to take these hits from these new powerful Pokemon, while also having the speed to use the disruption you have access to, like Encore. Something like Diancie could also be very, very good. It's got 150 defense and 150 special defense, really putting home the idea that you need really big stats to take a lot of hits from these newer Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. It also has access to spikes. As I said in my previous video, probably the best entry hazard currently in the Scarlet and Violet draft metagame, so you want to be prioritizing having spikers on your team, not necessarily over stealth rockers, but in addition to. Then you also have something like Tinkaton, which, while has some similar bulk, has a little bit more special defense, but has that 94 speed that we're talking about. Allows you to use utility like that Encore to actually be able to outpace some of the Pokemon you want to be Encoring, where the 60 speed from Clefable is not really cutting it. So let's say we wanted to make Clefable useful in Scarlet and Violet Draft League. Where does it currently sit in the point tier, and where do we go from there with it? Currently, it's in 12 points on the same tier as Primarina and Azumarill, which, while much better due to their water typing and offensive capabilities, certainly are a step above Clefable. We see Clefable currently in DCL, and the current Smogon tier is priced above Screamtail, and if we scroll down, the Tinkaton that we talked about earlier, with Tinkaton actually getting drafted here. I think you kind of have to put Clefable in that 10-point tier, realistically. It's probably still a little bit better than Diancie, one of the examples we covered on screen here at 8 points, but 10 points makes sense. There's a little bit of the forgotten childs of Draft League here, Corviknight, Empoleon, etc. And I think if you take 2 points away and put it in the same tier as Tinkaton, is Tinkaton still probably going to be drafted more? I would say so, but I think a Pokemon like Clefable just doesn't have the utility to contend in this format. And if you want people to use it as a niche fairy that can operate sometimes defensively while threatening a win con, I think pricing in 10 points makes sense. And there you have it. That is why Clefable is not a performant Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, and what you can do to either replace it or make it potentially draftable in your next Scarlet and Violet draft. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. As always, we do a lot of great competitive Pokemon content on this channel that you do not want to miss. Let me know what you would like me to talk about in terms of competitive Pokemon Draft League in one of the next uploads. The Spikes and Stealth Rocks video was unbelievably well received, and I appreciate everyone for all of that. Probably my best performing video of all Pokemon videos that I've done on this channel. So if you enjoy this competitive content, let me know. Let me know what you want me to talk about next. And as always, have a wonderful day.